Okay, we are live on YouTube and broadcasting.
Okay, thank you. Welcome. I'm Senator James Gray. Today we will be having public hearings on 4 Senate bills, Senate Bill 30, Senate Bill 31, Senate Bill 46, and Senate Bill 43. Before we get started, I will read through a checklist to ensure that the meeting we are holding is in compliance with the right to know law. As chair of the Senate Election Law and Municipal Affairs Committee, I find that due to the state of emergency declared by the governor as a result of COVID-19 pandemic, and in accordance with the governor's emergency order number 12, pursuant to Executive Order 2020-04 and its extensions, this body is authorized to meet electronically. Please note that there is no physical location to observe and listen contemporaneously to this meeting, which was authorized pursuant to the governor's emergency order. In accordance with the emergency order, I am confirming that we are providing public access to the meeting by telephone, with additional access possible by video and other electronic means. We are utilizing Zoom webinar for this electronic meeting. All members of the committee and the selected legislative staff have the ability to communicate contemporaneously in this meeting through this platform. And the public has access to contemporaneously watch and listen to the meeting on Zoom and YouTube and via the phone by following the directions and links provided in on the General Court website. We have provided public notice of the necessary information for accessing the meeting in the Senate calendar. And 3, we are providing a mechanism for the public to alert the public body during the meeting if there are problems with access. If anyone has a problem, please email remote senate, which is all one word, remote senate at leg.state.nh.us, or call 603-271-6931. 4, in the event that the public is unable to access the meeting, we will adjourn and reschedule. 5, excuse me. Please note that all votes taken during this meeting shall be done by a roll call vote. 6, finally, we let us start the meeting by taking a roll call attendance. When each member states their presence, please also state where you are and if anyone else is in the room with you during this meeting, which is required under the right to know law. I will call the roll. Senator Birdsell.
I am in my kitchen/office in Hampstead. My husband is working up in the office upstairs and will be coming in and out for coffee periodically. And I have the dog in the room.
Senator Ward.
I'm Ruth Ward. I'm at my home in Stoddard, and I am alone in the room.
Senator Susie.
This is Donna Susie, and I am at my home in Manchester, and I am alone.
Senator Perkins Quat.
Rebecca Perkins Quokka. I am in my office in downtown Portsmouth and I am alone.
And I am Senator James Gray. I'm in my home in Rochester and alone in this room. Okay. Does anyone have any questions or things before we start the first bill? Seeing none. The prime sponsor, is he on the line, Tricia?
I see him, Senator Gray.
Okay, so we'll ask him to introduce Senate Bill 30.
All right. Senator Guida, you should be able to unmute yourself.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. For the record, Senator Bob Guida, representing District 2. which includes the town of Tilton, but not Northfield, introducing Senate Bill 30. This is a very simple bill and one which we ask the committee to move on expeditiously in order that the involved communities may bring warrant articles forward to complete the requested legislation this year at their town meeting. This bill merely allows, and it's collaboratively between the towns of Tilton and Northfield, a change of boundaries to enable Tilton to incorporate what was once known as Atkinson Island, known as Allen Park, and known today as Tilton Island, into its boundaries. This has been agreed upon between the two communities' leadership, the select boards. Again, very simply, the one other change that's of some significance but of no consequence is that it would also change the county of that island from Merrimack over to Belknap. I'd be happy to take any questions. I offer to the committee the wide support of the representatives in the House that are representing all of those communities as well. And I thank you for the opportunity to testify.
Thank you, Senator Guida. Just as a point of clarification, if you talk about what is needed for the communities to agree to this, I think it's paragraph 1 in your bill.
Certainly, it would require a 2/3 vote of the voters present and voting at the annual town meetings in Northfield and Tilton, providing that this bill is successful in passing the House, Senate, and being signed into law by the governor.
Okay, thank you. Does the committee have any questions from Senator Guida? Seeing none, thank you, Senator. Whomever is it Aaron that's going to pick the next person on the list? All right.
The next person I see is Representative Harvey Boulay. So I'll bring her in. Representative, you should be able to unmute yourself now.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
You can, Representative.
Okay, thank you very much for taking my testimony. I'm Juliet Harvey Bolia, representative, and represent Tilton, and I'm supporting this bill. I think it'll be great for the betterment of both communities, and just want to concur with what Senator Guida said. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Does the committee have any questions for the representative? Seeing none, thank you. Aaron?
The next person I see is Jeannie Forrester.
Welcome, Senator.
Good morning. How are you?
I'm doing well, and I think the rest of the committee is at least smiling, so.
Well, I'll be quick. Good morning, Chairman Gray and members of the committee. As the town administrator for Tilton, I'm here this morning representing the town to testify on Senate Bill 30, legislation to change the boundary line of the towns of Northfield and Tilton and the county lines of Merrimack and Belknap, respectively. And I'd just like to give you a brief history of the island. In 1987, the heirs of Charles Tilton deeded Atkinson Island, also known as Tilton Island and also known as Island Park, to the towns of Tilton and Northfield to be used exclusively for a park, a public park. Today, the park is enjoyed by many. We host concerts in the park, Halloween activities, and other town-sponsored events. Folks picnic on the island, they attend weddings, and fish off the edge. It's widely used by the community. The island sits in the middle of the Winnipesaukee River and is in the town of Northfield in the county of Merrimack. Unfortunately, it is only accessible through the town of Tilton via a historic wrought iron and cast bridge. Many years ago, for many years, the two towns have shared expenses to maintain the island, but as the years have passed, there has been a desire by both towns to change the ownership status of the island. Tilton has twice had warrant articles, in 2017 and again in 2019, to ask the voters to take full responsibility for the island. Northfield likewise has had sister warrant articles asking their residents to convey the property to Tilton. In both cases, the residents voted in the affirmative. Attempts at contacting the heirs to allow this conveyance have been unsuccessful. So the towns hired an attorney to research the best way to move forward. Our attorney consulted with attorney Tom Donovan of the Charitable Trust Division of the Attorney General's Office, and the consensus was that the island property be transferred via a bill in the general court and then subsequently through a warrant article by both towns, which requires, as you heard, a 2/3 vote, followed by a quitclaim deed from Northfield to Tilton of any residual ownership interest. Senate Bill 30 is the first step in this process. And as you heard from prior testimony, this is supported by both towns, and I expect there will be someone from Northfield speaking after me. With that, I'd be happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Senator. Is there any questions from the committee members? All right.
Wow,
Thank you
that
very
was
much.
easy.
Hey,
I like it. Thank you.
you're welcome. Is there anyone else on the list, Aaron?
I don't see anyone else signed in to speak, but if they do want to speak, they can raise their hand or press *9 on their phone.
All right, we'll give them a few seconds to do that. Any takers?
It doesn't look like it.
Okay. With that, I'll close the public hearing. And let me look see what time it is. It's time to move on to the next bill. Since I'm the prime sponsor of the next bill, I will turn the meeting over to the vice chair, Senator Bertzel.
All right.
Yeah. I'm sure she's going to ask me to introduce the bill. So I'm Senator Gray from District 6, representing communities of Rochester, Farmington, New Durham, Alton, Barnstead, and Gilmington. I'm here to introduce Senate Bill 31 relative to voter checklists and modifying the absentee ballot affidavit. The thrust of this is that some of the people who request absentee ballots, when they get to the point where they have to sign the affidavit, since the affidavit envelope contains two separate statements, one for disability and one for not being able to attend the meeting due to illness or whatever, they are confused in which one of those affidavits to sign. It's a simple matter to take care of that by including both of those statements in one affidavit and having the person just sign one time. And then if you look at the wording of the bill, it says, pretty much I'm either this or that. They make the signature less confusing on them. The people will know which one to sign, and there won't be any problems. I have seen as a moderator where they haven't signed them because they really didn't know which one to sign. So that should eliminate that. And I would ask the committee to support it. Thank you.
So any questions from the committee? Seeing none. Thank you, Senator Gray. Aaron, is there anyone who's wishing to speak on this?
I do see a hand raised. Do you want me to go to the next person on my list or to let David Scanlon speak?
David Scanlon.
Okay. David, you should be able to unmute yourself.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair and members of the committee. I'm David Scanlon, Deputy Secretary of State. And I think this is a good idea. I just have a couple of comments on, I believe it's page 1 of the bill, on line 22, where it talks about sharing information with the other states. and responding to information that is shared with us by other states. And so on line 22, I'd just like to maybe clarify the sentence that's there a little bit more, where it reads, when electronic information transfer, and then I'd like to insert from another state occurs, the supervisors of the checklist where the person is remove currently, and just so it reads, where the person is registered, and then add in New Hampshire, will receive notice through the statewide centralized voter database. And then the sentence finishes out. I think that just makes it clear that whenever we receive a communication from another state that a New Hampshire voter has registered to vote there, that we will forward that information to the supervisors of the checklist in the town that they were registered and currently still appear on the checklist, so that the supervisors, excuse me, can take appropriate action and remove that voter from the list. And those are the only comments that I have on that bill.
Thank you, Deputy Secretary. Senator Perkins Coca.
Yes, thank you, ma'am. Just a question for you, Mr. Scanlon. I was wondering if you could just clarify which system of electronic transfer we're contemplating here. I know that there's one that's used by 31 states across the country to, verify when voters have moved or are deceased. And I was wondering if we were contemplating using that system under this procedure.
Thank you for the question. The short answer is not at the moment. The program that you're referring to is known as ERIC. And that is a program that is out there. I think the way this language is written, it gives us the flexibility to utilize that system when we reach that point where we might join them. As far as I know, there are no other active programs out there that are like ERIC, but this language does give us the freedom to deal individually with any state in the country, as we currently do with all of our sister New England states.
Just
Follow up?
follow up, Madam Vice Chair. Yeah. So under this language, is the Secretary of State contemplating essentially developing an independent system, or is the intention eventually to join ERIC using this procedure?
I think all of our options are open at this point.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions from the committee? Seeing none, thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else, Aaron?
It looks like Daniel Healy has signed up to speak. Daniel, you should be able to unmute yourself.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes,
Yeah.
we can.
All right. So I, Daniel Healy, I'm from the town of Derry, town clerk here. I am the co-chair of the New Hampshire City and Town Clerks Legislative Committee. We are in support of this bill. On the affidavit envelope, what we were finding in the last election, in previous elections, is that it's very confusing to the voters which side they are supposed to sign. They call us often, that's a common question. Do I sign the left side or do I sign the right side? So I think this bill clears that part up. It really doesn't need to be divided like that. We just have a few suggestions on some of the changes where it says, I'm a voter in the city or town of New Hampshire in ward. We believe that the ward can be taken out. The ballots are already sorted by ward.
Daniel?
Yes.
Daniel, can you just let us know what line it is on the bill that you're talking about?
I just have the text up on my end.
Okay.
It's
First paragraph, second paragraph, third?
it's down near the bottom of the bill, where it says, I do hereby certify under penalties of voter fraud.
Yep, line 34, page 2. Okay.
Okay. Yeah, and it says if I live in the city, I live in ward. So we're requesting that the ward part come out when the ballots are brought to the polling place, they're already brought to that ward. The outside envelope already indicates the ward, and I believe that it's not even really looked at on the envelope itself, the affidavit envelope, what they put for ward. And that was another common question that we received from a lot of voters is, what ward am I in? I need to fill out the affidavit envelope and I don't know. And some of the other calls were, I returned it, but I put the wrong ward. Is my ballot going to be rejected? So I think if you just remove that, I've talked to cities too that have wards, they're fine with it. Our executive board is fine with it. And then the other suggestion that we had is at the top of the envelope to put some statement that says, please sign this envelope and place ballot inside. We had quite a few voters that they did sign the envelope, but they put the ballot in with the, not inside the actual envelope, inside the other envelope. It wasn't all together. And we had quite a few voters that didn't sign at all. The pre-processing this year did help. We resolved most of those issues with the not signing the envelope, but a statement at the top, maybe bold, please sign this envelope and place ballot inside would help. So besides that, we do agree with the bill. We do think it's some good changes in here to make it a lot easier for the voter. And I'm open to any questions if you have any.
Any questions from the committee? Seeing none, thank you, Daniel.
Thanks.
I see the next person signed up is Sherry Farrell, but I don't see her on the list. But if she's here, could you please raise your hand? Okay. Sherry, you should be able to unmute yourself.
Can you hear me now?
Yep.
Yeah.
Hi, Sherry.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, everyone. I'm here on behalf of the New Hampshire City and Town Clerks Association. Sherry Farrell, thank you so much for having me. I don't want to take up a lot of everyone's time. Dan Healy, that just spoke, is a co-chair for our legislative committee. We are in full support of what he just stated. And we are speaking for every town and city clerk across the state with this one. The affidavit envelope really just caused so many unneeded phone calls to every office in the state. It confused our voters. These simple changes will make such a difference in our citizens' lives and in our working lives here in the town and city halls. So complete support, and thank you for taking the time to hear this.
Thank you, Sherry.
You're welcome.
Anyone else, Aaron?
I do not see anyone else on the list, but if they want to speak, they can raise their hand or press star 9. And I see that Sherry has her hand raised. So, Sherry, you should be able to unmute yourself.
I apologize, everyone. It's my hand should be down, but it just won't go down at the moment. I'm so sorry.
It's okay.
Okay.
Down now. Aaron, is it down?
I can put it down.
Thank you.
Anyone else, Aaron?
I don't see anyone else.
Senator Gray?
Yes. The thing about the notification, this is a case where the voter has told us that they voted in a particular community and a particular state. So they've come in and in the form, they are stating, yes, I was previously registered in Oshkosh, Texas, okay? And so contacting the state of Texas through their Secretary of State was what I had envisioned that the Secretary's office had meant when they put that language in. It would be my opinion that putting that into Eric or using Eric to do that much more overkill than what is really needed, since we do have the community and state of where this person voted. The other thing is I would certainly like to see if the Secretary of State's office wanted to comment about dropping the ward notification on that line 34 to 36. Because if the committee was looking at doing a committee amendment, it would be nice to wrap this thing up and get it done. Thank you.
Aaron, can we pull up Deputy Secretary Scanlon?
David, you should be able to unmute yourself.
Okay, I'm all set. Thanks. So if the suggestion is to just put the name of the city that a voter is in, but not mention the ward, I think that would add a little more work, maybe quite a bit more work for the supervisors or the board of registrars in the city to locate that person. Hopefully I understood the question properly.
Senator Gray, did that answer your question?
Again, that's, we'll go into that during the executive session when we do process the bill. And if we do it today, certainly someone who's applying for an absentee ballot, I know here in the city of Rochester, I believe that the ward is identified elsewhere on the envelopes that are sent back, but that's just my recall. I don't remember whether that's, I don't have anything to back that up right now. And it's just a question that's out there. And certainly with all of the other things that are in here, if the committee chooses not to accept that part of the suggestion, it still will be beneficial to clear up some of the other problems. Thank you.
All right. Any questions for Deputy Secretary of State Scanlon? Right. Thank you, David. Anyone else, Aaron?
I don't see anyone else signed up to speak.
Okay. Any questions from the Senator Susi? You're muted.
Sorry, if Mr. Healy is still on the line, I just wanted to verify with him
Let me see.
that the cities actually were in favor of removing the ward designation.
Dan.
Hi. Yeah, so we had an executive board meeting yesterday with our town clerk association. The ward is on the outside envelope of the return ballot. I'm not sure if Mr. Scanlon knew that it was the envelope part and not the voter registration part of the bill, because it is on the outside part of the envelope. So you sort, when you get those envelopes back, you sort them already by that, the outside. It's only open on election day, or if you do the pre-processing, that then you'd see the inside. So you have an identifier already on the outside of the envelope. And this year for Derry, the general election, we processed about 6,500 absentee ballots. And we have 4 districts here, and we sorted them into four districts. We never really looked at the inside affidavit envelope for that purpose. The only time was on election day or pre-processing.
So Dan, I have a question. Is so the ward is on the outside of the envelope as it comes in?
It is.
Okay.
So
and that's how you separate them?
That's how we separate them. If someone, most of the envelopes that we sent out had a pre-printed ward on there. If they were handed a ballot, say at town hall, they would have to handwrite their information. But we then, if they don't include a ward on the outside, we look up their ward, add it, put it in the right district or ward to be brought to the polling place. We did have 3 polling places before in Derry, so we had to definitely make sure they went to the right ones. This past election, we just had the 1 polling place, but on the outside of the envelope is really where we look. We don't really even look at the inside to see what they marked there for their ward.
Okay. Senator Susi, does that answer your question?
Yeah, the clarification was good, because so the issue really is taking it out for the ease of the voter on the affidavit envelope since it's already captured on the exterior envelope for sorting.
Yes. So that what really ends up happening is the voter, when they get the affidavit envelope, they're filling it out. And they, even though their ward might be printed on the envelope we sent them, they don't always realize that. So they call us and they say, I want to fill this out right. I want to make sure my vote counts. And if I put the wrong ward, I'm not sure it will. I mean, it still will, but they don't know that. So it's a common, that was one of our most common questions, is which ward am I in, so I can fill out the affidavit envelope correctly so my ballot doesn't get rejected. So I think if you just take that away, we won't get that question. And it really doesn't affect much to have the ward there. It doesn't really change anything because it's already sorted, it's already going to the right spot because of the outside of the envelope.
So Dan, just a question. So if you're doing the pre-process, the ballot, the absentee ballots come in, you separate them from the outside envelopes into the wards or districts. And then, but once you've done the pre-processing, so when you're pre-processing, they're already sent to the wards. So they're presumed to be in that ward.
Yes, and they go back into the envelopes. So the outside envelope's ripped open. You verify that they signed it, that it looks complete. You put it back in that outside envelope.
Oh,
so
okay.
It still stays with that envelope until the day of the election. And then once it's fully processed, the envelopes are kept, the ballots go through the voting machine.
Okay, so they're actually already opened in their ward.
Yes.
Okay. Any other questions of Dan?
No, thank you, Madam
Thanks.
Being none, thanks, Dan.
Thank you.
I do see that there's 3 people with their hands raised. The first person is Tina Guilford. Tina, you should be able to unmute yourself.
Can you hear me?
Yes,
Yeah.
we can, Tina. How are you?
I'm good. So I'm the town moderator in Derry. And we had, as Dan said, 6,500 absentee ballots for November. I can tell you that there were approximately half of them that they did not even fill out what district they were because they didn't know. It was the #1 question that I got myself because I was probably the most accessible election official on social media. People were confused about their ward district. And in fact, in Derry, we have districts, not wards. So that made it even more confusing. And at the end of the day, we really do need something at the very top that says, please place your absentee ballot inside this envelope. The amount of ballots we received that the 2 items were separate inside the big envelope was kind of scary. So that is something that could definitely be added as a line at the very, very top. And honestly, all you really need is the 1 signature, because we had people sign on both sides. That's really only, unless you pre-process, you're only looking at that inside envelope on election day. What district that says on the inside of the envelope makes absolutely no difference, because it already has to be sorted and alphabetized and everything ahead of time.
Okay. Any questions for Tina? All right. Thank you, Tina.
Thank you.
The next person I have is Liz Tantarelli. Liz, you should be able to unmute yourself.
Thank you. Liz Tantarelli, League of Women Voters. It's good to see some of my old friends here from election law committee in the Senate. Hello. I will confirm that there was a lot of confusion among voters who reached out via phone and email to the League of Women Voters about 2 things: which side of the envelope to sign and what ward am I in, when most of them lived in a small town that didn't have wards and just didn't know how to fill that out. So I would support these changes. Thank you.
Thank you, Liz. Any questions from Liz? For Liz, sorry. Seeing none. Thank you, Liz.
The next person I have signed up or their hand raised is Sherry Farrell again. Sherry.
Hi, everyone. Thank you, Liz, and also Tina, for stating exactly what you did. You said it beautifully. And also just Londonderry being a large community, 21,000 registered voters, we don't have any wards. So you can imagine the confusion, the small towns, but then also the larger ones, not everyone has wards. So getting that off for so many reasons would just make everyone's lives a lot easier. Thank you.
Thank you, Sherry.
Welcome.
Anyone else, Aaron?
It doesn't look like anyone else has raised their hand to speak.
If anyone's interested in speaking, feel free to raise your hand. Seeing none, I will close the hearing on Senate Bill 31 and hand the reins back over to Senator Gray.
Well, thank you very much. With that, we'll open the public hearing on Senate Bill 46. And I know we have the prime sponsor right here. She's on the screen right now. So Senator Perkins Quokka.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Good morning. For the record, I am Senator Perkins Quokka, representing Senate District 21, the city of Portsmouth, and the towns of Madbury, Lee, Durham, Newington, Newmarket, and Newfields. I am the prime sponsor of SB 46, an act relative to the use of electronic poll books by cities and towns. A pilot program for the use of electronic poll books began around 2015. The towns that have been involved have had a very good experience and are anxious to make the program permanent. Specifically, I've spoken to the town clerk in Milford, who has participated in the pilot program. She's very supportive of this bill, and I'm not aware of any issues that have arisen in the electronic pilot poll book program. The language involved in SB 46 would create an entirely opt-in system, and no municipality would be forced to adopt electronic poll books. An electronic poll book is a small administrative change that would be used on election day. Instead of having paper checklists, towns that chose to use poll books will have the information electronically on a computer or iPad. Such devices can or cannot be hooked up to Wi-Fi. Poll books will speed up lines at polling places, which will decrease waiting times for voters, and it makes elections officials' jobs easier, not only with less people flowing through the polling place quicker, but with poll books to tabulate all the information that the election officials have to collect at the end of the election, saving municipalities time and money. The process on election day will remain largely the same. The voters would be asked to provide the same documentation they are now. If they do not have documentation, they will be able to sign an affidavit. The hope is that the electronic poll books simply provide a quicker check-in and shutdown. They can also enable additional ways to back up the check-in information, as some towns have used the electronic system alongside a paper system to create duplicates. Electronic poll books serve to speed up a paper process, which is cumbersome to both the voter and election officials during the election, and crucially help to minimize time after the election that costs towns and cities time and money. While election poll books can and will be used at registration, mostly they are a tool for voter check-in. In addition, I'm offering an amendment which improves the language of the original bill with suggestions directly from a town clerk with experience participating in the program. The amendment removes certain onerous requirements, such as the need to print a checklist on site, which could cost a town up to $30,000 for printers, and instead simply maintains a compliance requirement for each town and city. In addition, the amendment alters the requirements of Section 3 of the bill so that once one town has verified a vendor through trial use, other towns are not burdened by additionally verifying the vendor. Lastly, it has come to my attention that the Secretary of State wishes to enter a final report on the pilot program by November of this year. I look forward to discussing with the chair and members of the committee how we can accommodate entry of this report by the Secretary of State while still allowing municipalities to move forward with this time and money-saving effort. I'm happy to try to answer any questions you may have. I believe there are others who are signed in to speak who also may be able to answer some of your questions.
Thank you, Senator. Does the committee have any questions of the senator? Seeing none, thank you, Senator. And Aaron?
I see that Deputy Scanlon has his hand raised. Do you want me to let him in?
Yes, I would.
Deputy Scanlon, you should be able to unmute.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Once again, I'm David Scanlon, Deputy Secretary of State. And I guess what I would like to do today is ask the committee to re-refer this bill to the next legislative session. There has been some good work done in the use of the electronic poll books in a few communities within New Hampshire. Some things have been learned, but there are still some things that we need to flesh out. The current statute requires that the Secretary of State's office file a report on the trial program of electronic poll books by November 1st of this year. And what we would like to do leading up to that, as soon as the town meeting session is over and the clerks have some time, and we have some time, is to sit down and go over all of the issues and the things that have been learned related to the use of electronic poll books. The statute that was set up and the program that was set up required a trial program at the request of a municipality. And through the use of those machines, there is an evaluation vendor that is in place that is designed to take a look at the actual devices, gauge them for their use and usability, but also look at the cybersecurity components of those devices. As you recall, before COVID, it seems like a long time ago, but the big issue that was out there nationally related to elections was cybersecurity. And there are some vulnerabilities of these devices in that regard. And there have been some pretty significant failures of electronic poll books in other locations around the country. We want to make sure that those devices are secure, especially when they use Wi-Fi and the cloud, and when they contain voter registration information, a lot of it private and confidential. I know that the evaluation vendor, at least in the case of Milford, has made some recommendations for the vendor, which was Electech, I believe, in their town that needed to be addressed. Although we have a report from Milford, we really don't have a report yet from the evaluation vendor on that device so that we know which items really need to be addressed moving forward. So that's an area that we need to look at. Now, with that said, I think that we have learned enough from the use of the e-poll books that they are benefiting the towns even when they are operating with the statutory process that currently exists in parallel. For example, voters have been able to go through lines that have not been labeled by alphabet. So, the voter that shows up at the polling place using an e-poll book can go into the shortest line and not have to get into the A through D line, which might be longer than the M through O line. That's a benefit. The other benefit is that at the end of the night, they can, with a couple of keystrokes, come up with the numbers of people that checked in at the polling place without having to count all of those names off of the marked checklist. That's a benefit. And those are things that can be used now. And I think we should recognize that and certainly, allow those uses with an e-poll book and maybe, put them into full implementation in an incremental manner as we can address some of the other major concerns that we have out there with those devices. So those are all items that we would like to include in the report that is due on November 1st to give the committee better and more complete information on where we should be heading with these devices moving into next year. So with that, Mr. Chairman, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Does the committee have any questions of the Secretary? Senator Bertzel.
What type of failures are we talking about in some of the other states?
Things like, and I can get you I'll get the committee some information on that, but if the system just goes down, which has happened, I think it may have happened in Georgia, things are going to start happening, like long lines. If there's no backup process, what happened to information that was already entered into the database. You need to be able to produce a checklist somehow of those voters that have already been through the system to make sure that you don't have a duplication of voters going through a second time. And making sure that the information that is being inputted in the system is secure. Some of you may have heard of the name Harry Hursty. He's the individual that actually hacked the ballot counting device that we use in New Hampshire about a dozen years ago. The device was not under election day conditions, but he's a well-known expert on being able to hack into systems and things that you can do to to help secure your process. Where was I going with Harry Hursty? We do rely on him a lot in New Hampshire's electronic devices, but he's one that has shown the vulnerabilities of being able to hack the devices, and actually explained to us in a public hearing that was held several years ago that somebody can put a corrupt barcode on the back of a driver's license, let's say, that these electronic poll books can scan to get the voter information, and that information would be enough to take the system down. So there are things like that that need to be looked at to make sure that those devices are secure.
Additional questions from committee members?
Thank you.
Seeing none, I do have a couple of questions. The situation that we have right now is that unless I authorize them to use just the electronic poll books, I'm still forced to have a paper check-in so that the voters would still have to go through the alphabetized check-in list. Just get you to comment on that, if I could.
That's true. The trial process requires that the current statutory process of a paper checklist be run in parallel with the system. Until we get a report from the evaluation vendor that the electronic poll book is ready to go. That has not occurred in any of the towns that have utilized the machines. Now, I think the towns have come up with some pretty creative ways to manage that process, and based on a conversation with them, the report may include maybe a relaxation of those requirements moving forward.
The other thing is that if we wait for the November report that's due from your office to write legislation that would be required for next year, it's realistic that it would be June of next year before we would be able to do anything. What is it that we can put into this bill that would at least advance the ability for these towns with less regulation to move the ball forward? And you don't have to answer today if you like to think about it for a while.
That's a good question, and I think that there are some areas that that we could look at where they could be used, and I'd like a little time just to think about what those might be, so that the committee can think about that for your executive session.
Again, the constituency out there is that they want to move to electronic poll books. Okay, and referring this bill and not having it do anything doesn't seem to get us towards that end. But if there is something that we can do to write into this legislation that would get us further down the path and collect more information, certainly I would be in favor of it.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just, and I understand the desire of the communities to use these devices moving forward because it can make their job much easier. Our job is to make sure that the devices that are used are sound, that they're going to be foolproof, that we don't run the risk of a failed election because these devices don't perform or get hacked in a malicious way. And so we have to find that balance.
Agreed. Are there any other questions of the Secretary, Deputy Secretary? Senator Perkins Coker.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Deputy Scanlon, I did just want to point out that, you know, in lines 20 through 22 of the amendment, you know, we do have a requirement for adequate backup systems. So I just wondered if that also perhaps added some comfort from your perspective in this procedure.
Absolutely. I think whatever system we use moving forward is going to have some type of a backup just in case it goes down. You know, you need to be able to pull up who's already been through the check-in line, and so I certainly agree with that.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else? Okay, thank you, Deputy Secretary. And
You're welcome.
Aaron, who's next on the list?
It looks like the next person on the list, and I'm going to say his name wrong, it's Pete Basileri. He signed in as neutral, so let me bring him in. Pete, you should be able to unmute yourself.
Yes, I am, Aaron. Thank you very much. Good morning, Chairman Gray and the committee. I am the town moderator and school district moderator in Milford. And my goal, and I'm sure it's the goal of all of my colleagues across the state, is to provide safe, secure, and trustworthy elections. And the e-poll books that we have been testing since March of 2019 are a critical tool for enabling us to have those trustworthy elections that the voters in New Hampshire have come to rely on. We are using the Electech system and have been doing it in an authorized trial for both, well, I should say for all local, state, and national elections. The concern I have about this bill has been addressed by Senator Perkins, who mentioned that the requirements around a backup system that includes printers will be removed from the bill. The practice we have in Milford, and ahead of the meeting, I sent you a copy of the presentation that I have made to the New Hampshire Municipal Association annual meeting, as well as to their moderators training session. What we do in Milford is we have a voter come in, they check in with the clerk, and when it's successful, we give the voter a receipt. The receipt has their party, it also has their name, address, and the voter takes that receipt and exchanges it for a ballot. In the process of that exchange, the receipt is then saved and turned over to other ballot clerks who are marking the paper checklist in the background. And that is how we have the required paper checklist as a backup to the e-poll books. I have to be honest with you that aside from the very first time back in March of 2019, when we understaffed that table, we have not had a problem ever since. And in November, we were never more than 5 or 10 minutes behind the e-poll books. So if there was a power outage, for example, which I don't characterize as a failure of e-poll books, I think it's a situation that occurs within the polling place. If there's a power outage, for example, in the time it takes us to reset the check-in area so that we can put paper checklists in place of the poll books, we will have caught up with all of the receipts that are being marked on those paper checklists. So aside from the fact that the power went out and took some number of time, maybe 10 or 15 minutes, because we have upwards of 14 different check-in tables in Milford, the voters won't have noticed any delay due to us not having at the moment accurate real-time checklist. So I am a strong advocate of using e-poll books. We've had great success with them in Milford. And to be honest with you, if we were to take those away, the voters would revolt. There's no question about it, because they don't have to wait in line by alphabet. And as you know, from standing at a grocery store or at a polling place, there's nothing more frustrating in one sense than seeing the line next to you go a lot faster because you happen to be in the wrong letter of the alphabet at the moment. So as far as re-referral, to Deputy Scanlon's comment and Chairman Gray's comment, bear in mind, please, that the best way for a town that hasn't done this yet to test e-poll books is in March of 2022. Because in that year, you'll have not only the town and local election, but also a state primary and a statewide election. And those are the three opportunities for a town or city to test e-poll books prior to the next really big election, which will be in November of 2024. So I highly recommend that we move as quickly as possible to give as many communities as possible the ability to work with e-poll books before we have another very large election in November of 2024. With that, I'd like to thank you for your time today, and I'm happy to entertain any questions you may have about the process or Milford's experience.
Does anyone have any questions for Mr. Bessalelli? And I hope I'm pronouncing it close.
Oh, I've heard it worse, no worries.
Seeing no questions, thank you very much. Aaron?
You're welcome. Good day now.
The next person signed in is Cordell Johnston. So let me bring him in. Cordell, you should be able to unmute yourself.
Thank you, Aaron, and good morning, Mr. Chairman and committee members. Cordell Johnston, representing the New Hampshire Municipal Association. We support the bill, and I will just say I am by no means an expert on poll books, but we have heard from many municipalities, many moderators, and other election officials a lot of interest in using them, based largely on the experience in Milford and a couple of other towns. I don't really have anything to add to what Pete Basselier said, because he knows a whole lot more about it than I do. So I would just support that, and also echo both his and Senator Gray's concerns about possibly slowing down the process through re-referral. I think we all agree we don't want to do anything that compromises security, but whatever we can do to get as much done as fast as can be done, we certainly support that. And as I said, I am not an expert, so please don't ask me any technical questions. But if you have any policy questions, I'd be happy to answer those.
Does anyone have any questions for Mr. Johnson? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And Aaron?
The next person I have signed in to speak is Sherry Farrell.
Go ahead, Sherry.
Sherry, you should be able to unmute yourself.
Thank you, everyone. I'm testifying today as the president of the New Hampshire City and Town Clerks Association, also representing the town of Londonderry. Back when this first started to become a project, Milford and Londonderry really partnered together in the beginning baby steps of this, learned an awful lot from each other. And in Londonderry, it has been a huge success. We do have all of the backups in place, and it's just We need to start advancing in the technology end of our elections, but with all of the backups that Deputy Scanlon mentioned, very important that we do take these steps and that we look at each step along the way. In Londonderry, just a quick story. The first time we tried them, a lot of trial and error, and you're nervous, and how is this going to work? How are our residents going to respond to these new poll pads? And I received a letter maybe a week after our first election from an 86-year-old woman. And in the letter, she just said she almost didn't come out to vote. She was worried, you know, the traffic. Remember, we do have one polling place in Londonderry. And but she forged ahead. She's never missed an election since she was 18. And when she got in there and saw that we had this new technology poll pads that didn't require her to wait in a huge line like she'd experienced before, you know, there was the open queue. She went in, she was in and out in about 10 minutes, and she just wanted to thank us. So what I love about the poll pads and advancing these new technologies is that there's no ageism involved. You know, our younger citizens that are voting for the first time love them because they're progressive, and also to get that letter from one of our seniors, it says it all. And we do have all the checks and balances in place. Exact same process here in Londonderry. When the voter checks in, they're given 2 receipts. One is so that they can obtain their ballot. The second one we keep, and that's what we use to then go to the hard copy of the checklist as a backup system to check everyone in. So thank you so much. Deputy Scanlon has been phenomenal with us, and and listens, as does our Secretary of State. So it's a group project, but anything we can do to move this forward so that it doesn't get caught up. I thank you to Chairman Gray for your response of, and also Senator Perkins Coca too. Thank you. You were great voices for us, and you're saying exactly how we feel out here on the front lines, but they are phenomenal. So thank you for your support.
Okay, thank you. The committee members have questions for Ms. Farrell. Seeing none, thank you. Aaron?
I don't see anyone else signed in to speak. However, if they do want to speak, you can raise your hand or you can press *9 on the phone. I do have one person who raised their hand. It looks like Joan Dargy. Joan, you should be able to unmute.
Hi. So I did submit to speak, but I guess I might have been a little late. I did it this morning. So I'm the town clerk in Milford, and I'm also the co-chair of the legislative committee for the town and city clerks executive board. On behalf of the executive board, they are in favor of this bill with the recommendation by Deputy Scanlon, who spoke with the board yesterday at our monthly meeting. I did submit testimony. I'm not going to go over that now because I'd rather address some other issues that were brought up and answer some questions by Senator Gray. So, as my moderator also addressed a lot of what I talked about, but I did want to talk about, in the very beginning of this, I heard a lot about failures, and that was one of the things that Deputy Scanlon talked about. One of the biggest failures known on e-poll books was talked about. It was Mariposa County. I actually investigated how the e-poll books went down in Mariposa County because I couldn't understand how that could possibly happen. And I found out that they were not set up right. So basically they opened the polls that morning and their IT department had not done a test to verify that the e-poll works worked. So they never even were able to start. And they didn't have any backup. Unlike if we were to get into the room and the poll books wouldn't work that day, our moderator and we already have all set up all the poll books, paper checklists to put into place. So what happened in Mariposa County would never happen. The other thing I did when I first looked at poll books was to work with our vendor, which is Electech. And I'd like to address a few of the other concerns. One of them was that Wi-Fi in the cloud. In Milford, we did not use Wi-Fi or the cloud. We actually were using laptops that are all hardwired together. Any of the capability of those laptops to be inadvertently turned on to Wi-Fi or Bluetooth by any of the ballot clerks who might just be sitting there because they didn't have a line and everything is disabled. The other thing is any open connections for like a USB, those are all plugged except for the ones that we are using. So we have no vulnerabilities. And I will tell you that Harry Hursty came to our election on during the presidential primary in February, and he was actually sitting at a table trying to break into our system. And I have had a chat with him, and I'll tell you, if he was able to break into our system, he would have let us all know. So that's a proof to show that our poll books, the way we have set them up in Milford, are, as far as we can tell, are not penetrable. So on another note, it was mentioned that if the poll books were to go down, that was one of the big things, was having the high-speed printers as the requirement, which Senator Quokka in the amendment, it has been removed. I did a cost justification of that. It was like $24,000 to $30,000, and we'd be wheeling in printers on pallets in order to meet that requirement. So when I looked at the Electech version, and in my testimony, I do mention that the way that we used them in New Hampshire is not how any other state in the United States is using poll books. Most of all the other states are connected to Wi-Fi. I wanted to take out any possibility of us failing our trial, and I worked many hours with Electech vendor to figure out how to do that. And we were the ones that came up with printing the receipt on the printer and taking that receipt over to a paper checklist. And that's the other thing, is we're not doing a dual, like our residents, our voters are coming in, they're only checking in at the poll book. All of the updates to the paper checklist is all being done in the back of the room with individuals who are just filling out their paper checklist. They're not, seeing their neighbor for the first time and having a 15-minute conversation and then forgetting to check somebody off. The other thing about having that slip backup is a couple of times, even in filling out that paper checklist in the back of the room, some of the clerks doing that have inadvertently checked off the wrong person. What's great about the poll books is we actually have a backup. We can go through the slips by the alphabet to correct any mistakes that were done on the paper checklist initially, which if you're not using poll books, you do not have. So if somebody comes in and checks off the son instead of the father, you have no way to recover from that. So that's a great thing about the poll books. And the other thing I wanted to say is there is no, Deputy Scanlon mentioned about the private data. We have no private data in any of the poll books. The only information in the poll books is the exact information that's on our checklist. And all of that information is public information. So even if someone were to get into that electronic poll book, there's no private data that they can get. The other thing that we did not do in Milford is we are not scanning driver's licenses, for the reason that somebody could put a barcode on the back of a driver's license and hand it to a clerk to scan in, and then they could scan a virus or malware into that. So we do not scan driver's licenses. And especially with the pandemic, they just hold that driver's license up to the glass screen. The clerk looks at it and checks them in. We were able to check in voters about 25 seconds per voter if you're not having any conversation. You can get as fast as 19 seconds per voter to check them in. And the other thing that I'm in agreement with Deputy Scanlon on the coming up with the report and looking at the poll books now. I mean, I submitted a report 30 days after our first trial in March of 19. That is supposed to go to all the chairs. So part of that report is waiting on the Cyber Scout, who's the security analyst vendor, to review what Electech has presented. In this, I just have to say, I did a lot of work with Electech, with the vendor, to get to where we are today. And so I don't believe that in the way it exists, the e-poll books are not a plug and play. It's not like any town clerk can pick this up, go, oh, order e-poll books and just put them in play, because everybody uses them differently. And what we've defined in Milford has to be a defined set of standards in order to allow for them to be used someplace else. And that's my biggest concern. We need to make it easy for the for another clerk to pick these up and use them, because not all of us on Londonderry, they have LHS, which is working extremely closely with them to make them succeed, just as Electech is working with Milford to make them succeed. But we need to come up with a list of standards and specifications in order for all of the cities and towns to be able to use these. So I thank you for bearing with me through this. Thank you.
Questions from committee members? All right, thank you very much, Joan. Aaron?
I see that Lori Radke Hollis has raised her hand. Lori, you should be able to speak.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Very good, thank you. Yes, my name is Lori Radke. I was a former clerk in Bedford, New Hampshire, and in 2017, many of you may have remembered, I was one of the first towns to actually implement the pilot, and it was very, very successful. And I think the work that we did in Bedford, that many of these towns like Milford and Londonderry have worked off of, and I'm very proud and excited to see how far they've come, and that we are now looking at new legislation to allow even more clerks to go forward using electronic poll books. It was scary that day that we used them. It was in 2017, I believe. Of course, I don't think I slept a wink the night before worrying. We did have the backup, but at 7:05, the exciting part of that evening, if I can remember, was getting the exact number of voters checked in 5 minutes. I was very excited. So I certainly support this. I'm no longer a clerk, but I support all their endeavors in moving forward. And I hope the legislation does move forward with this. Again, thank you for the opportunity to speak, and good luck with this.
Thank you, Lori. Are there any questions from the committee? Seeing none. Aaron?
I don't see anyone else with their hand raised, but if they want to, they can hit the raise hand button or *9.
This is the third time, Aaron, so I'm going to close the hearing and move on to the next bill. Okay, the next bill is Senate Bill 43. The prime sponsor is Senator Gannon. Is he on the line?
He is. Senator Gannon, you should be able to unmute yourself.
I think I have. Chairman Gray, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Thank you. Good to hear you. It's like 8 years ago, a flashback.
Right.
Honorable members of the Election Law Committee, it's nice to talk to you this morning. And I got all dressed up. I'm wearing a great suit, but you're missing all that. So Bill 43, one of my constituents came to me this early in the winter, and he said, I feel all the stickers say your vote should count. He felt like he could be in the past a disenfranchised voter. I want as many people to be fairly represented in the electoral system. We'll look back at a couple races recently. The 2016 election, Trump got no delegates for New Hampshire. So, and then if you look back, the Gore race in 2000, it was a 271 to 270 votes. Gore would have picked up another vote. So it would have been it would have been the narrowest election ever. There was a 2-vote margin to spare. It would have been 1. So every vote does count, and I want people to feel part of the system. We look at our divided America today. People don't feel that what they're doing is counting. So right now with the winner take all, I feel like we're in the Roman Forum. If you gave 2 to the winner and then you split it by each C district, people would be, if your side went like 60%, even though you might be the fallen side, you'd still have some representation. It would be a 3-to-1 split. So the winner of the state's still always going to take 3 votes. But if, you could have almost a 51-49 statewide and one, it's just breaking it down. So more people are represented, more people feel that their voice counts. At the beginning, I might have looked back at it sort of in a partisan manner, saying, geez, we're not getting enough delegates on our side. But as the more I've looked into it, it seems very fair. Again, like that Gore race, it would have put it down to a 1-vote win for president. So every vote counts. I want people to feel part of the system. They've adopted it in Maine and Nebraska. I do think I'm somewhat premature. I think a bipartisan. I amended the bill. I think you guys have the amendment to have a study committee to look into it. I'd like to sit down with the Democrat on each side, so neither side feels that it's a partisan bill. I want people on both sides of the aisle voting for the bill. I don't want to come back and try to get a 13 vote. I want it like 18 votes on saying that this is a good thing. It's good for New Hampshire. It's good for the voters. So again, as I've looked back, it doesn't really historically advantage one side or the other. People have said to me, well, it's we're redistricting. Well, I'm not thinking about redistricting because that may go one way, it may go the other. It's just going to be, hopefully, whatever the census says will be the fair split. So that shouldn't be a factor here. It just should be what's best to have more people being fairly represented so they really feel that their vote counts. And it seems like a good idea to me. But again, something of this magnitude should have people on both sides of the aisle looking at it and deciding. So I know we don't like study committees because we all get put on tons of them. I would be one of the people, and I'd hope one of the Democrats in your committee would be there and would look at it and spend a couple weeks talking to Nebraska and Maine. I have put in calls to their Secretary of State, and I'm sure they're all busy. And I haven't got return calls and stuff. So I really would like to look into seeing if both sides in both states think it's a fair distribution. It seems like a good idea, and I'd like to pursue it further.
Okay, just for the public, Tricia, if you'd post his amendment. The amendment is 2021-0036S. And we'll...
I can share my screen, Senator Gray.
Put that up there.
Can everyone see it?
Yes, we can now, Aaron. Thank you.
Just so that people who are having a difficult time seeing it, it would have 2 members of the Senate, 3 members of the House, defines the quorum, a small section on what the duties would be, and requires a report be written by November the 1st, 2021. Okay. Are there any committee members that have questions of Senator Gannon? Senator Perkins-Coker.
Thank you, Chair. Senator Gannon, I wondered if you had considered including in the language of the bill, in the spirit in which you're offering it, ensuring that both parties are represented on the commission.
That's a great idea. I was just thinking that it would be that way because the committee would be partisan otherwise. So that language, if you could write that in, amend my amendment and throw that language in saying that, both sides are in, at least one of each party would be as a representative and senator on both sides of that, and maybe independent members. I guess if you start saying things like that, then people who are independents might say, well, that's not fair. We're not. So yeah, fair way of doing that would be great. Or like you said, one of the reps, one of the senators be of both parties. Sounds like good language to me.
Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. Anyone else from the committee have a question? Seeing none, Aaron?
Thank you, Senator Gray. Thank you, Commissioner.
It looks like the next person signed in to speak is Representative Abramson.
Representative Abramson.
Representative, you should be able to unmute yourself.
Yeah, I just hit the unmute button. Are you able to hear me?
Yes.
This is Representative Abramson. I'm speaking against the bill as written. It uses the Maine-Nebraska approach where they break it down by congressional district. We do have a House version of this bill that's been significantly reworked. I'm not sure that a study committee is necessary, but it's up to the Senate what you folks choose to do on your side. You could also wait until the House version works its way through the Election Law Committee, which is probably going to be in the next couple of weeks. I don't think that the House version of this has been scheduled for a hearing yet. But the founding fathers, John Jay, James Madison, and Alexander Hamilton, when they talked about the Electoral College in Federalist Papers 61 to 68 or maybe 70, looks like they're talking about proportional allocation is what they were leaning towards, but state legislatures have a lot of different options. Most states use winner take all, congressional district popular, congressional district majority, which is what Maine and Nebraska use. You can use proportional popular vote, which is a hybrid system. You can use popular vote by state, or you can use what's in the Belanger bill as a way of allocating the Electoral College votes. So the state legislatures are allowed broad authority to consider how electors are broken up. My suggestion, if you're going to go by district, is to break up into districts, areas that have a lot of federal issues like the Seacoast, which I represent, or areas that are near a VA hospital or some such thing, to try to maximize the interest of presidential candidates to come up here to New Hampshire and discuss federal issues that affect New Hampshire. But there are a lot of options that are available to the legislature right now. But again, my suggestion, maybe rather than a study committee, is just to let the House Election Law Committee go over the options first. You might retain this bill and then decide whether or not you want to take the House's suggestion or modify that bill if it comes through.
Questions from the committee for Representative Abramson? Okay, thank you very much. Aaron?
It looks like the next person signed in to speak is Pat Rosensteel. Pat, you should be able to unmute yourself.
Yeah, hi, thank you. Thanks for the opportunity to be here. Senators, my name is Patrick Rosensteel. I am Senior Consultant for National Popular Vote, and I'm the Chairman for the Institute for Research on Presidential Elections. And anytime there's an opportunity to talk about Electoral College reform, I try to make myself available. I agree with the proponents of reform that the current system is in many ways unsustainable. Certainly, we see that it lends itself at times to chaos and controversy. I think the net result is tribalism when it comes, and I think it's appropriate that Electoral College reform is discussed at the state legislative level, right? Because the United States Constitution leaves it to the various legislatures to determine how they want to award their electors and whether or not they want to reform the current system. A congressional district system is a legitimate constitutional system, as pointed out. Maine and Nebraska have adopted that state statute, changing from their state-based winner-take-all law that my home state of Minnesota has. I would, just caution that, there have been unintended consequences and shortcomings of congressional district systems. I think if what you want to do is make every voter in every state politically relevant in every presidential election, there's one way to do that, which is to have a national popular vote for president, which will make sure that every voter in Maine is New Hampshire is politically relevant in presidential elections moving forward, as well as every other state. And that there's a plan in place to do that called the National Popular Vote Interstate Compact that has passed 16 states with 196 electoral votes. and will take effect if states with 74 more electoral votes join them. It says that when states with 270 electoral votes have the bill in place, those states will award their electors to the candidate who wins the most popular votes in all 50 states in the District of Columbia. It is the way to ensure that one person, one vote, that foundational principle of American democracy.
Patrick, this
Yeah.
is Senator Gray.
Yes,
I would request that you confine your remarks to the bill in front of us and not the national popular vote.
Yes, Senator, thank you. Well, I guess as it relates to a congressional district system, I think it will create battleground congressional districts, and it's unknown whether or not any of those congressional districts would be in New Hampshire. They seem to be reliably Republican or reliably Democratic congressional districts there. So there are other options, and I hope the legislature in New Hampshire will consider them, and I'm grateful for the time.
Are there questions from any of the committee members? Thank you for your testimony. Aaron?
It looks like the next person to speak is Liz Tantarelli.
Ms. Tantarelli.
Let's see.
There you are.
Hi, thank you again for allowing me to speak on this. Like the previous speaker, I, from the League of Women Voters of New Hampshire, support a popular vote for the president, getting rid of the Electoral College or the National Popular Vote Compact as a workaround. But we oppose this bill. I have sent you written testimony that includes a link to a study that was done in 2016. So I hope you'll take a few minutes to look at that written testimony. One effect, if a number of states use proportional voting, and currently there are only 2, as has been pointed out, so I doubt that it makes a difference what New Hampshire does. But if a number of states or all the states went to that system, it would be far more likely that an election for president would be thrown into the House of Representatives to decide. Because if there is one or more strong third-party candidates, it's highly unlikely that either of the major candidates, any candidate, would reach the 270 electoral vote threshold. Now, if it gets thrown into the House.
Liz, this is Senator Gray.
Yes, Senator.
As in the last speaker, we want you to speak to this bill and not a different bill. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. I am speaking to this one in that if this bill were to be passed along with similar bills in other states, the outcome would be a diminution of the individual voters' rights, because the votes for president would move from the Electoral College into the House of Representatives, where each state has 1 vote. Now, maybe we in New Hampshire would like that. Our vote would count as much as California's, but it takes it even further away from individuals' right to vote for president. So that's why I opposed it, but I would like you to take a look at the written testimony on what would have happened if that had been in place in 2016. It would have had a very different outcome and would have gone to the House. So thank you for this opportunity.
I just checked, your testimony is available to all the committee members on the website. Thank you. Are there any questions for Ms. Tantarelli from the committee members? Okay, thank you. Aaron?
Thank you.
I don't see anyone else signed up to speak, and I don't see any hands raised.
We'll give you a couple of seconds to raise your hand if you choose to.
It looks like Representative Abramson has raised his hand.
Representative Abramson, you'd like to speak for a second time?
Yeah, I just wanted to make a quick point that this is contrary to what the last couple of speakers said. This isn't a proportional voting system, or it's not a proportional allocation. There are several different proportional allocation options that are available to the committee if they would like me to send that in, but this is a breakdown by congressional district. It's a main bill.
You are free to send in any testimony that you want. It will be posted for the committee members on the site.
Thank you.
Seeing no others, I close the public hearing. And I'll accept a motion to go into executive session.
So moved. Go into executive session.
We have a motion by Senator Susie and seconded by Senator Birdsell to go into executive session. Are we going to do this with me calling the roll or one of the staffers calling the roll?
Usually the chair will call the roll.
Okay. Senator Birdsell.
Yes.
Senator Ward.
Yes.
Senator Susie.
Yes.
Senator Perkins Coca.
Apologies, just a point of clarification. What are we voting on?
We're moving into executive session.
Yes, ma'am. Senator Perkins Coca, yes.
Okay, and Senator Gray also votes yes. We are now in executive session. From the testimony, it looks like we're probably very close to agreement on Senate Bill 30 from Senator Gaida. That is permitting the towns of Tilton and Northfield to redraw their boundary lines. Do I have any comments from any of the committee members?
I move
to approve.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion by Senator Ward. Who was the second?
Senator Birdsell?
Okay, Senator Birdsell, second. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the roll. Senator Birdsell.
Senator Birdsell, yes.
Senator Ward.
Yes.
Senator Susie.
Yes.
Senator Perkins Coca.
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. Do I have a motion to add this?
Move to put this bill on the consent calendar, Mr.
I have a
Chairman.
motion by Senator Susie to put it on the consent calendar,
Second.
seconded by Senator Birdsell. And is Senator Birdsell, your vote?
Oh, Senator Birdsell, yes.
Senator Ward,
Yes.
Senator Susie,
Yes.
Senator Perkins Coca,
Yes.
and the chair votes yes. Do I have any volunteers to take the bill out?
I will.
Senator Birdsell will be taking the bill out. Let me just do my math here. Okay. In my notes, on Senate Bill 31, if I'd like to have a short discussion. Certainly the suggestions that were made, I certainly take as friendly amendments to the bill. The suggestion of the clarification by the Secretary of State's office around line 22, the dropping off the ward, I don't see that is mandatory since it is on the outer envelope. And, you know, the direction to make sure that the ballot is put into the inner envelope, the affidavit envelope, certainly is another friendly amendment. Was there anybody else on the committee that saw anything else in the testimony that I'm leaving out? Senator Perkins Coca.
Yes, sir. I would just like to clarify the language around, you know, there being sort of this electronic check of data of voters who have moved. I appreciate your comments during the hearing, and I recognize that entering into a system such as ERIC might be.
This is
Yes,
okay.
sir.
Yeah. Okay.
I'm happy to comment just on the ward and then comment on this later if you wish. Okay, so Yes, sir. So, I think it's just important to recognize that, the purpose of having an electronic registration system where we can cross-check voter data is really to have a system where as many states participate as possible and to have, a willingness and reciprocity amongst the states to make sure that they're sharing information. And so from my perspective, it would be a positive thing for New Hampshire to clarify that if we're going to have such a cross-check system that we do join ERIC, because it is a widely accepted system. It includes states that are most frequently places that New Hampshire residents move to and from, which include Florida and as of 2020, Massachusetts. ERIC is available to New Hampshire at a pretty low cost. It's estimated to be a one-time registration around $25,000 and an ongoing annual fee around $20,000 per year, which we can use Help America Votes Act funds for, and we have available here in New Hampshire. So understood that we're trying to keep it simple, and I get that, but I also think we need to recognize that states who are part of a system like ERIC, would probably prefer to go through that system, and it will be simpler for them and for us in the long run to use a secure system that's already been established than rather to have our own system, which doesn't really allow us the full benefits of that reciprocity.
Okay, thank you. Comment, Senator Birdsall.
Just on, and I agree with your comments about ERIC. However, that's going to have to be a separate bill because we have to authorize the Secretary of State to participate. We have to authorize as a state legislator him to enter into ERIC. So that's probably not something that we can do. We should do on this one, but have a separate bill.
It would also mean that this bill would be an FN bill because it would have to be an appropriation. Just for background, the reason that we're looking at having the Secretary of State's office do the notifications that are already prescribed in the statute instead of the town clerks and the supervisors of the checklist is to make that system more formalized. And again, this would not be protecting our database because we're registering this person who has presented themselves either in front of us or through the absentee ballot application process. And the information that we're providing back to the state would be so that their system would be updated. So again, if the committee chooses to entertain an amendment to this bill to do something with ERIC, it is possible, but I think that it will make this a much more partisan conversation than it needs to be for this. And if that's what we want to do as a committee, then certainly I'll support your ability to bring that forward. Other comments, Senator Susie?
Mr. Chairman, were you planning on accepting the friendly suggestions as an amendment, perhaps putting the bill back up on screen, or were you planning on coming back with a drafted amendment? Because I do think that the ERIC issue is an important issue, but separate from that, at least in the testimony provided, it seemed like the suggestion about changing ward, and I think the Deputy Secretary of State had asked us to remove the word currently, some change on line 22 of page 1. I do think those are important changes, and I think the bill does some really good things to ease some of the concerns voters had, or to remove some of the questions that they had during the process. So were you planning on just doing that as we sit here today on?
Again, it depended upon whether or not you wanted to put words in there about ERIC. If ERIC goes in, then I don't believe that we've got sufficient words to process that bill today. If we use the others as a friendly amendment and write a committee amendment, with the things that I highlighted at the beginning, then we could exec the bill today. So again, with deference to you, Senator Susi, and you, Senator Perkins Coca, if you guys would like to explore, adding some stuff about Eric and coming back with an amendment that would do that, certainly would defer this discussion until a later meeting of the committee. Senator Perkins Coca.
Yes, Chair. I wish I had the perfect answer to that question. I guess I would raise for discussion whether this bill would require a fiscal note in either case, because I think having the Secretary of State figure out how to undertake these kind of checks is probably going to require some resources on their part anyway. And so that's simply a question asked whether you've looked into that at all.
My understanding of what would be required from the Secretary of State is that currently, right now, the program produces a list of the voters who have registered with data in there that provides information about where they voted last, and that the Secretary of State, just as the town clerks would at the present time, would put some postage on that, stick it in an envelope, and off it would go, and that would be completing what would be required. That I haven't talked to the Secretary of State, but because that is not a large mailing that would happen, that I believe he believes that he can do that within his budget, what he currently has. So therefore, it would not, in my opinion, require an FN notification on this, and no additional funds. So again, my personal feelings are that this committee has discussed Eric in the past, and that we certainly can revisit that, but I'm not sure that this bill is the vehicle to do that. Again, that would be my opinion. Senator Birdsall.
And I agree with you, Mr. Chair. I think that for the expediency of the cities and towns, and with the upcoming elections in both the municipal elections and probably the city elections, I think adding anything having to do with Eric would extend the time that it would take to pass in the House as well. And I think we should save the Eric discussion for another time and let this one go through as is. Just my thoughts.
Senator Ward, you've been relatively quiet.
I'm trying to learn from everybody here. I knew that there were a lot of discussions last year on Eric, and I picked up some of it. I personally, right now, I think if we put in the suggestions that the Deputy Secretary Scanlon made, we should just put those in and have the bill pass.
Again, I'm not trying to force this thing through today. It is my feeling that listening to the committee members, that if an amendment to include Eric were added to this, that amendment may fail. But I'm certainly willing to give you two members the opportunity to develop that and put it forward.
Mr. Chairman, we are scheduled to meet next week, is my understanding, so we could take this up relatively quickly, if not today.
Yes, we are scheduled to meet both Monday and Thursday next week and the week after. In fact, a couple of the bills I think that we're taking up the week after are yours, Senator. Senator Perkins Coca.
Yes, sir. Recognizing that there are some really important changes in the absentee ballot language that we want to get passed today, I am open to simply moving the bill forward without adding that formal amendment concerning Eric.
Tricia, did you take sufficient notes that you can draft the committee amendment with the language from the Deputy Secretary of State and dropping the ward and adding that
Yes.
the addition to the language be that the ballot needs to go inside the affidavit envelope?
Yes. Can I put the bill up on the screen? And then I just need a clarification on the Secretary of State's language that he wanted. Let me just put it up here. Okay. Can everybody see that?
Yes.
Okay. Yes? Oh,
Yeah.
okay. So,
Line 22 is where he started.
Right.
and okay, so what will,
It should say, I think it, and someone correct me if I'm wrong, but on line 22, the sentence starts with when electronic information transfers from another state occurs, the supervisors of the checklist where the person is registered and cut out currently.
Right.
okay.
That's all I have, but then I have in New Hampshire. So,
Well, we have the testimony of the secretary, and again,
Yes.
I'm willing to have Tricia go back and look at the testimony that he submitted.
Yes, I can do that.
Do it from there.
Mhm.
If that's acceptable to the rest of the committee. And then dropping the ward off of the piece below.
Yes.
and that's not you, Ruth.
Yeah.
You're gonna drop me right off.
And then
what-
adding the notification. And I'm not sure that I need to clarify, to put that notification in the statute. But I'm willing to, about the envelope. Is the Secretary of State, the Deputy Secretary, still on the conference call or the Zoom meeting?
He is. Do you want me to let him in to speak?
If you would, please.
Deputy Scanlon, you should be able to speak now.
I'm here.
Your suggestion on further guidance on making sure that the ballot gets in the affidavit envelope?
I think that's appropriate. We like to have as much of the text that will go on the envelope or any document in the statute, if at all possible. So we would be fine with including the instruction.
Where would you like it, Deputy?
Where the language is, well, let me just look at the bill here real quick. On the first page, line 29, where it says affidavit envelopes of sufficient size to contain the ballots on which shall be printed the following. And then right after that, and before the other text changes on the envelope itself.
Okay.
And the wording you would like to see?
Mr. Chairman, may I ask, I think we're starting to get sort of beyond just a couple notations, and I definitely support the underlying legislation and want to make sure we get it right. Perhaps if we gave Mr. Scanlon until next Monday when we meet.
Yes, ma'am. I can.
Be able to all feel comfortable that we've got it right.
Okay.
Okay.
Trish, if you,
It's up to the committee, obviously, but that would be my suggestion. We're real close, and I think we agree that these changes need to happen. It would just be nice to see them.
Tricia, if you would get the Secretary of State's input into that, where it would go, and have that drafted, I would appreciate that.
Sure.
And we can distribute it to the committee members.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Senate Bill 43 and Senate Bill 46. If the committee wants, I don't see that there's probably the closest one to doing anything would be, in my opinion, would be Senate Bill 43 if we wanted to accept the amendment and have a committee. What are the feelings on 43 and 46 by the committee?
I'm okay with establishing a committee. I mean, to move right into something like this, I think would be maybe a bridge too far, but it might be kind of interesting to see what the other states are doing and how it works, but
Could we get a copy of the House bill just to see what they are covering?
Good point.
That's perfectly fine with me.
Does anybody know what the House bill number was? Did he say? I didn't get that.
I don't know if you mentioned it.
I can find it though and send it to everybody.
But wasn't he going to send something to us?
Aaron
He had some information that he said he was going to send out. I don't know if the bill was part of that.
It does look like Representative Belanger has his hand raised. He might be able to answer that. Do you want me to let him in?
Certainly. Representative Belanger, do you have the answer to the question?
I do, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for taking my statement. The House bill in question that you'd be referring to would be House Bill 370.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Does the committee have anything else for Representative Belanger?
Nope.
Okay. So we will postpone executive session on that. And on 46, again, it is my opinion that our constituents out there do want to move the ball forward. How that can be done, I think that if we take a week or two on this particular one, we may be able to find common ground. Some of the things that were testified is in Milton, that if we authorized, and again, just shooting from the hip, systems similar to the Electech system, which is hardwired with no data other than what is in the printed checklist, and that no scanning of licenses be allowed, and whatever else that the secretary wants to put in that. There's another thing that we really haven't talked about, is that the communities after the election, after they've done the counting of the books, which technically I believe doesn't have to be done for 72 hours after the election, but most moderators require it to be done election evening because all of his workers disappear, that there is still the process of going back in to ElectNet and entering each of the voters that they have voted, and if it's a primary, which ballot they have taken, etc. And that is also a significant expense that can be eliminated if we can get these systems up. Senator Ward.
How much is one of these polling books? I mean, is there going to be a significant expense to the communities? And I'm assuming we would have one in each ward. So for some of the larger communities, that might be chunk of money.
The machine itself, you know, is going to be upwards of $200 depending on what, but the programming and the maintenance of the system is going to be an expense. If you know, we can get that information as we move forward. But the number of machines, one of the estimates early in this process that I believe it was some of the Senate hearings that we had, is that it would be about the same number of tables that you have for check-in right now, but that one of those machines, instead of being, you know, one of the ones at the table, would actually be the one that the supervisor would have at their station. And the reason for that difference is, you know, the voters checking in on the poll books, having at least one less, is because that they would be more efficient. Of course, some of that had to do with scanning licenses and being able to bring that data up. So again, you know, part of that is still out there, you know, and yet to be determined. Senator Birdsall, you had your hand up.
Well, also, in the first line where it says cities and towns are hereby authorized, it's not making it mandatory. So if they don't want to put the expenses out there, they don't have to. So.
Senator Perkins Coca.
Yeah, and I would just simply add that, you know, the volunteers that are there are often paid in some places. And so that might be a trade-off and expense they're welcome to make for themselves.
Okay, are there any other comments on any of these bills? We've done the one, we're looking at amendments on 31, and both 43 and 46 have a little bit of work to do. So any other comments for executive session? Then I'll entertain a motion to come out of executive session.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, there were so many lights that lighted up, I couldn't tell who made the motion. It sounded like Senator Birdsall made the motion and Senator Susie seconded it.
Whatever.
And we'll move on with Senator Birdsall, your vote.
Senator Birdsall, yes.
Senator Ward.
Yes.
Senator Susie.
Yes.
Senator Perkins Coca.
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. Any other business to come before the committee? If not, I'll accept a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Senator Birdsall, seconded by Senator Ward. Call the roll. Senator Birdsall.
Senator Birdsall, yes.
Senator Ward.
Yes.
Senator Susie.
Yes.
Senator Perkins Coca.
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. Thank you all for your attendance, and thanks for all of the people who testified.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.